You think you're chasing pleasure, but you're running from yourself. Every conquest, every fantasy, every moment of release, it's not bringing you closer to satisfaction. It's taking you further from it. And deep down, in that place you don't want to look, you already know this. Let me tell you something about your so-called desire. It's not desire at all. It's fear, dressed up in a tuxedo. You're not addicted to bodies or beauty or that electric moment of connection. You're addicted to not feeling the enormous hole inside yourself. The void, the nothing, the unbearable lightness of your own existence. Oh, but it feels so good, you say? It's natural, it's human, it's biological. Yes, and eating is biological too. But when a man eats until he vomits and then eats again, we don't call that natural. We call it exactly what it is, an attempt to fill something that food was never meant to fill. You see, every time you reach for that next hit of lust, whether it's pornography at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep, or swiping through faces like they're playing cards, or fantasizing about someone who isn't the person lying next to you, you're not reaching towards something. You're reaching away from something. Away from the terrifying responsibility of becoming who you actually are. And what happens? The more you chase, the emptier you feel. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. Not only does it not satisfy, it makes the thirst worse. Much worse. Because now you're not just thirsty, you're poisoned by the very thing you thought would save you. Jung said it perfectly. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. You hear that? He put idealism in the same category as morphine. Because he understood something you're just beginning to grasp, that we can get addicted to anything that helps us avoid the real work of living. But here's where it gets really interesting. You think lust is about sex? You think it's about bodies and skin and heat? How charmingly naive. Lust is about power. It's about control. It's about reducing another human being to an object that exists solely for your gratification. And why do you need that? Because you feel powerless. Because somewhere along the way, life showed you that you're not in control, and you've been desperately trying to prove otherwise ever since. Think about it. In that moment of lustful fantasy, you're God. You create entire worlds where everyone wants you, where you're irresistible, where you call all the shots. No rejection, no disappointment, no messy human complexity, just pure, uncomplicated worship of your imagined self. But reality has this funny way of not giving a damn about your fantasies. So what happens when you come back down? When the screen goes dark? When the stranger leaves? When the fantasy evaporates? You're still you. Only now you're you plus shame. You plus disgust. You plus the growing realization that you just made the whole bigger. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances, Jung wrote. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But you're not looking for transformation, are you? You're looking for confirmation, are you? You're looking for confirmation. Confirmation that you're desirable, that you're powerful, that you're anything but the frightened child you feel like inside. So you develop strategies, elaborate ones. You become a hunter, a seducer, a collector of experiences. You tell yourself stories about your conquests. You keep score. You compare. You compete. All to avoid asking the one question that matters. What am I so afraid of? I'll tell you what you're afraid of. You're afraid that if you stop the endless pursuit, if you actually sit still for 5 minutes without a screen or a fantasy or a body to distract you, you'll have to face the truth. The truth that you don't know who you are. The truth that you've been performing for so long, you've forgotten there's a person underneath the performance. You've created what Jung called the persona, the mask. And you've worn it so long, you think it is you. The charmer, the player, the one who's always looking, always hunting, always hunting, always hunting, always hunting. It's consuming the very thing it was meant to protect. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, Jung observed. So let me ask you, what irritates you about other people's sexuality? The prudes? The ones who seem satisfied with simple intimacy? The ones who don't seem to need what you need? That irritation, that contempt you feel, it's not about them. It's about the part of yourself you've murdered in order to keep the addiction alive. Because here's the thing about addiction, any addiction. It requires you to kill off parts of yourself. Your sensitivity has to go. Can't have that when you're objectifying people. Your building extreme did it again. Because last night you did it again. From Easter, your capacity for genuine intimacy, dead. Your ability to be present, murdered. Your deep knowing of what real love feels like, you strangled that one in its sleep years ago. And for what? For a few seconds of chemical release that leaves you emptier than before? For the illusion of connection without the risk of rejection? For the pantomime of intimacy without the terror of being truly seen? You want to know the really sick joke? The thing you're using to avoid pain is creating more pain, The thing you're using to feel powerful is making you weaker. The thing you're using to connect is ensuring you'll always be alone. Jung understood this paradox deeply. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And there it is, the core of your addiction. You're using lust to avoid the terrifying work of self-acceptance. Every time you lose yourself in fantasy, you're saying, the real me isn't enough. I need to be someone else, somewhere else, with someone else. But here's what you don't understand yet. That hunger you feel, that endless gnawing hunger, it's not sexual. It never was. It's spiritual. It's the hunger for meaning, for purpose, for genuine human connection. It's the hunger to be real in a world that rewards fakeness. It's the hunger to be whole in a world that profits from keeping you broken. You've been trying to feed a spiritual hunger with physical food. It's like trying to cure loneliness by turning up the volume on your television. The noise might distract you for a while, but the loneliness doesn't go anywhere. It just waits, patient as death. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart, Jung wrote. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. But you don't want to wake up, do you? Because waking up means feeling everything you've been running from. The shame, the emptiness, the profound disappointment in how you've been living. So you keep dreaming. You keep building elaborate fantasies where you're different, where you're better, where you're finally satisfied. But every fantasy requires a bigger hit next time. What excited you last year bores you now. What shocked you last month seems tame today. You need more extreme scenarios, more novelty, more intensity. You're chasing a dragon that doesn't exist. And the whole time, life is passing you by. Real life. The life where people have morning breath and bad days and complicated feelings. The life where intimacy means seeing someone's demons and choosing to stay. The life where love is built through 1,000 small acts of courage, not one grand gesture of conquest. You're missing all of it. While you're lost in your digital harem or your mental fantasies, someone real is eating dinner alone, wondering where you went. While you're constructing elaborate scenarios of domination or submission, the opportunity for genuine connection walks right past you. While you're medicating your anxiety with orgasms, the source of the anxiety grows stronger. Jung knew this pattern intimately. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't become who you truly are when you're constantly escaping into who you wish you were. Every moment spent in fantasy is a moment stolen from reality. And reality is the only place where healing happens. You want to know something funny? The people you're fantasizing about, they're just as lost as you are. They're playing their own games, wearing their own masks, running from their own shadows. You're not connecting with them any more than a drowning person connects with the water. You're just using each other as props in your mutual delusion. But occasionally, very occasionally, something breaks through. Maybe it's a moment after sex when the performance ends and you catch a glimpse of the real person next to you. Maybe it's a flash of genuine tenderness that scares you so badly you immediately retreat into conquest mode. Maybe it's the voice of a child or the eyes of an elder that reminds you what real human connection looks like. And in that moment, you feel it. The weight of what you've been doing, the cost of your addiction, the profound loneliness of being surrounded by bodies but never touching souls. You feel how tired you are, how empty, how far you've drifted from anything resembling love. The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, Jung said, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. But you've forgotten how to play. Real play, the kind that doesn't require victims or winners or watchers. You turned everything into a performance, a transaction, a score to be settled. Remember being a child? Remember when touch was just touch? When a hug was just warmth and safety, not a prelude to something else? When you could look at another person without calculating what they could do for you? That child is still in there, buried under years of conditioning and disappointment and defensive strategies. But you think that child is weak. You think innocence is something to be conquered, not cherished. So you bury it deeper. You pile more bodies on top of it. You drown it in stimulation, anything to keep from hearing its voice, which whispers the same thing over and over. This isn't what I wanted. This isn't who I am. Here's what Jung understood, that you're just beginning to grasp. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You think you're choosing your desires? You think you're in control of your attractions? How adorable! Your unconscious is running the show, and it's been running it since before you could talk. Every person you're attracted to is a projection. Every fantasy you create is a map of your unconscious. Every compulsion you feel is a message from the parts of yourself you've disowned. But instead of reading the map, instead of decoding the message, you just act it out, over and over, like a broken robot. You're attracted to unavailable people. That's because you're unavailable to yourself. You're drawn to danger and drama. That's because you're terrified of the calm where you'd have to face yourself. You need constant validation. That's because you've never validated your own existence. I am not what happened to me, Jung said. I am what I choose to become. But you're not choosing, you're reacting. You're letting your wounds make your decisions. You're letting your fear drive the car while you pretend to hold the wheel. And the saddest part, under all that compulsion, under all that desperate seeking, is a human being who just wants to be loved, not desired, not conquered, not consumed, loved, seen, accepted, held. The very things you're making impossible through your addiction. Because here's what addiction does: it makes you unlovable. Not because you're bad or broken or beyond redemption, but because you're not there. How can someone love you when you're constantly disappearing into fantasy? How can someone reach you when you're armored in performance? How can someone know you when you don't know yourself? You've become a ghost, haunting your own life. Present in body but absent in spirit. Going through the motions but feeling nothing. Well, that's not quite true. You feel the hunger. Always the hunger. The hunger that no amount of bodies can fill because it's not a physical hunger at all. Jung said, where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking. Look at your relationships. Look at your interactions. Which one rules in your life? Be honest. When you're in the grip of lust, are you seeking to love or to conquer? To give or to take? To merge or to dominate? The answer reveals everything. Because lust is the shadow of love. It's what happens when love gets twisted by fear, wounded by rejection, poisoned by shame. It's love with all the goodness sucked out and only the hunger left behind. And you know what's really tragic? The cure for your addiction is everywhere, available at every moment, completely free. It's called presence. It's called showing up to your actual life instead of the movie in your head. It's called feeling your feelings instead of fucking them away. But presence terrifies you, because presence means feeling the pain you've been avoiding. Presence means admitting you've been wasting your life. Presence means acknowledging that all your conquests add up to nothing. Zero, a big fat existential void. Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, Jung observed, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. And there it is. The core of your isolation. You're so busy performing, you've forgotten how to communicate anything real. When was the last time you told someone what actually scares you? When was the last time you admitted you don't have it all figured out? When was the last time you let someone see you without your armor, without your game, without your carefully constructed identity? You can't remember, can you? Because vulnerability feels like death to you. So you choose the living death of addiction instead. At least that's a death you can control. At least that's a pain you understand. But here's the thing about control. Pain, it's still pain. And here's the thing about understood suffering. Still suffering. You haven't solved anything. You've just found a familiar hell and decorated it with fantasies. Jung knew this dance intimately. The word happiness would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. But you're not looking for balance. You're looking for escape. You want all the highs without any of the lows. All the pleasure without any of the vulnerability. All the connection without any of the risk. Life doesn't work that way. It never has. It never will. The price of real intimacy is the risk of real rejection. The price of real love is the risk of real rejection. The price of real love is the risk of real pleasure, is the acceptance of real pain. You can't have one without the other. That's not a bug in the system. That's the system. But you keep trying to hack it. You keep looking for the cheat code, the shortcut, the way to get all the rewards without any of the risks. And lust seems like that shortcut. It seems like connection without vulnerability, pleasure without consequence, power without responsibility. Except it's a lie. The biggest lie you've ever told yourself. Because the consequences are there, piling up in the dark. The vulnerability you're avoiding is turning into a wall around your heart. The responsibility you're shirking is becoming a weight on your soul. You're not getting away with anything. You're just postponing the bill, and the interest is compounding daily. Every day you spend running is another day you'll have to face eventually. Every fantasy you lose yourself in is another layer of reality you'll have to peel back. Man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious, Jung wrote. But you're doing the opposite. You're pushing everything down, drowning it in distraction, suffocating it with stimulation. You're at war with your own psyche. And guess what? The psyche always wins. Always. So what happens when you lose this war? What happens when the addiction stops working? Because it will stop working. They all do eventually. Your tolerance will get so high that nothing satisfies. Your shame will get so heavy that no pleasure can lift it. Your loneliness will get so profound that no number of bodies can fill it. And then what? Then you'll be face to face with the thing you've been running from all along. Yourself, raw, unfiltered, unmedicated, just you and the mirror and the terrible question, who am I when I'm not performing? Some people call this rock bottom. Jung called it the night sea journey. It's the place where all your strategies fail, where all your escapes close off, where you're forced to sit with yourself and feel everything you've been avoiding. It's horrible. It's the thing you've organized your entire life to prevent. And it's also the only place where real healing begins. Because until you're willing to sit in that fire, until you're willing to feel that pain without reaching for your drug of choice, you're just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, Jung said, but by making the darkness conscious. Your lust addiction? That's darkness. The compulsion, the shame, the endless hunger, all darkness. But instead of making it conscious, you're feeding it in the shadows. Every time you act out, you're giving the darkness more power. Every time you lose yourself in fantasy, you're letting the unconscious drive. Every time you use another person as a drug, you're strengthening the very chains you claim to hate. You want to know the way out? Stop running. Simple as that. Impossibly difficult as that. Stop running from the feeling. Stop running from the emptiness. Stop running from yourself. Turn around and face the thing that's been chasing you. What will you find? Pain, certainly. Lots of it. Years of accumulated grief and rage and fear. But underneath that, underneath all that defensive armor, something else. Something you've forgotten existed. Jung called it the self, capital S. Not the ego self that's always performing and comparing and conquering. The real self. The one that exists before all the wounds and strategies and addictions. The one that doesn't need to prove anything, or conquer anyone, or fill any void, because it is already whole. But you can't meet that self through thinking about it. You can't meet it through reading about it. You can't meet it through talking about it. You can only meet it through being it. And being it requires stopping all the things you do to avoid being it. The running, the chasing, the conquering, the escaping. All of it has to stop. Not forever, just for a moment. Just long enough to feel what's actually there when you're not medicating it with lust. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart, Jung reminded us. But your heart is exactly where you don't want to look, because your heart knows the truth. Your heart knows that every conquest is a compensation. Every fantasy is a lie. Every moment spent in addiction is a moment stolen from your real life. Your heart knows that the love you're seeking can't be taken. It can only be given and received. Your heart knows that the connection you're craving can't be forced. It can only be allowed. Your heart knows that the satisfaction you're chasing isn't out there somewhere. It's already inside you, waiting. But to access what's inside, you have to stop obsessing about what's outside. You have to stop treating other people like vending machines for your pleasure. You have to stop using fantasy as a substitute for reality. You have to stop, period. And in that stopping, in that terrifying stillness, something else becomes possible. Real intimacy. Not the performance of intimacy, not the conquest of bodies, but the meeting of souls. The thing you've been seeking in all the wrong places. The thing that was available all along if you just had the courage to stop running. Jung understood. The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed. Your lust addiction is an intense conflict. It's you versus you. And as long as you keep feeding one side, the addicted side, the conflict continues. The war rages on. The casualties mount. But what if you stopped feeding it? What if, just for today, just for this hour, just for this moment, you didn't act out? What if you felt the feeling instead of numbing it? What if you stayed present instead of escaping? What if you chose reality over fantasy just once? It would hurt. No question. It would feel like dying. The addiction would scream and thrash and demand its fix. All your strategies would activate. All your justifications would arise. Just one more time. It's not that bad. Everyone does it. I'll quit tomorrow. But what if you didn't listen? What if you just sat there and let it scream? What if you treated your addiction like a toddler, having a tantrum acknowledged but not indulged? What would happen then? I'll tell you what would happen. Eventually, the screaming would stop. Eventually, the craving would pass. Eventually, the craving would pass. Eventually, you'd find yourself on the other side of the compulsion. Still alive, still breathing, still you. Only more you than before. Because every time you don't act out, you reclaim a piece of yourself from the addiction. I cannot cause a light to shine upon another's path unless it is also shining on mine, Jung said. So let me tell you my truth. I understand this addiction. I understand the hunger, the emptiness, the desperate seeking for something, anything, to fill the void. I understand the shame, the self-hatred, the promise that tomorrow will be different. I understand because we're all addicted to something. We all have our favorite escapes from reality. We all have our strategies for avoiding the difficult work of being human. Lust might be your drug, but the pattern is universal. We're all running from something. We're all terrified of sitting still. But here's what I've learned, what Jung knew, what you're beginning to discover. The thing we're running from is also the thing we're running toward. The pain we're avoiding contains the healing we're seeking. The shadow we're denying holds the light we're craving. Your lust addiction isn't your enemy. It's a teacher. A brutal teacher, perhaps. An expensive teacher, certainly, but a teacher nonetheless. It's showing you where you're wounded. It's revealing what you're afraid of. It's pointing directly at the work you need to do. The work of integration. The work of self-acceptance. The work of learning to be alone without being lonely. The work of connecting without conquering. The work of feeling without fleeing. The work of being human in all its messy, vulnerable, uncertain glory. This is the work Jung called individuation. Becoming who you really are, not who you think you should be. And it's work that can't be done while you're lost in addiction. It can't be done while you're using other people as drugs. It can't be done while you're at war with your own nature. We cannot change anything until we accept it, Jung wrote. So start there. Accept that you're addicted. Accept that it's causing suffering. Accept that you've been using lust to avoid deeper truths. Accept that you've been using lust to avoid deeper truths. Accept that strategy isn't working. Accept that something needs to change. Not tomorrow. Not after one more conquest. Not when you feel ready. Now. Because readiness is a myth. You'll never feel ready to give up your favorite escape. You'll never feel prepared to face what you've been avoiding. You'll never feel strong enough to do this work. So you start where you are. Weak, scared, addicted, human. You start by admitting you can't do this alone. You start by asking for help. You start by telling one person the truth about what's really going on. You start by treating yourself with the same compassion you'd show a friend who was struggling. Because here's the secret. The moment you stop fighting yourself is the moment healing begins. The moment you accept your addiction without judgment is the moment it starts to lose its power. The moment you turn toward your pain instead of away from it is the moment transformation becomes possible. Jung knew this paradox well. The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. You've been trying to change through force, through willpower, through shame. How's that working out? You've been trying to think your way out of a problem that exists below thought. You've been trying to conquer something that can only be embraced. Your addiction is like a child throwing a tantrum. The more you fight it, the louder it gets. The more you shame it, the stronger it becomes. But what if you responded differently? What if you said, I see you, I hear you, I understand you're in pain. Let's sit together and figure this out. This isn't about giving in to the addiction. It's about understanding what it's trying to tell you. Every compulsion is a communication. Every craving is a clue. Every moment of desperate seeking is showing you where you're split off from yourself. So listen, really listen. Not to the surface desire for sex or conquest or escape. Listen deeper. What's underneath the lust? What wound is it trying to cover? What emptiness is it trying to fill? What underneath is it trying to pick of? What emptiness is it trying to fill? What part of you is it trying to protect? Because here's what Jung understood that most of us miss. Our symptoms are also our solutions. Your lust addiction isn't just causing problems, it's solving problems. Twisted solutions, perhaps. Destructive solutions, certainly. But solutions nonetheless. Maybe it's solving the problem of intimacy by keeping you safe from real connection. Maybe it's solving the problem of powerlessness by giving you the illusion of control. Maybe it's solving the problem of worthlessness by providing temporary validation. Until you understand what problem your addiction is solving, you can't find a better solution. Until you appreciate the protective function of your behavior, you can't develop healthier protections. Until you honor the intelligence of your psyche, even in its dysfunction, you can't access its wisdom. In all chaos, there is a cosmos. Jung said, "In all disorder, a secret order. Your addiction might look like chaos, but there's an order to it. A logic, a purpose, not a healthy purpose, not a sustainable purpose, but a purpose born from the deep intelligence of a psyche trying to survive. So start with gratitude. Yes, gratitude. Thank your addiction for trying to protect you. Thank it for all the years it helped you avoid pain you weren't ready to feel. Thank it for showing you where you're wounded. Thank it for being such a clear teacher about what isn't working. Then tell it you're ready to try something different. Not because you're strong or enlightened or healed, but because you're tired. Tired of running. Tired of performing. Tired of the emptiness that follows every conquest. Tired of being a ghost in your own life. This tiredness isn't weakness. It's the beginning of wisdom. It's your psyche saying, enough. This isn't working. There must be another way. And there is another way. But it requires something you've been avoiding at all costs. Vulnerability. Real vulnerability. Not the performed kind that's designed to seduce. Not the strategic kind that's calculated for effect. The messy kind. The uncertain kind. The kind where you don't know what happens next. The kind where you might get hurt. The kind where you're not in control. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Who you truly are isn't the conqueror. It isn't the performer. It isn't the one with all the moves and strategies and scores. Who you truly are is much simpler and much more magnificent than that. Who you truly are is the one who can love and be loved without games. Who can connect without conquering. Who can feel pleasure without addiction. Who can be alone without desperation. Who can be intimate without armor. Who can be human without apology. But to become that person, you have to let the current version die. The lusty, hungry ghost you've been inhabiting has to go, not through violence or force or shame, through acceptance, through integration, through the slow, patient work of becoming whole. This is the real journey, not the journey of accumulating experiences or conquests or pleasures, the journey inward. The journey Jung called the process of individuation, the journey from fragmentation to wholeness, from performance to authenticity, from addiction to freedom. It's not an easy journey. It requires facing everything you've been avoiding. It requires feeling everything you've been numbing. It requires being everything you've been pretending not to be. It requires the kind of courage that makes sexual conquest look like child's play. But here's what's waiting on the other side. Real connection. The kind that doesn't leave you empty. Real pleasure. The kind that doesn't require increasingly extreme stimulation. Real power. The kind that doesn't depend on reducing others to objects. Real love. The kind that sees and accepts all of you, shadow and light. Jung put it this way, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But transformation requires presence. It requires showing up as yourself, not your addiction. It requires risking the very thing lust protects you from, being seen, known, and potentially rejected for who you really are. This is the terror. This is why you run. This is why you hide in fantasy and conquest and endless seeking. Because what if you show up fully and they don't want you? What if you reveal yourself and they leave? What if you drop the performance and you're not enough? But here's what your addiction has hidden from you. The people worth knowing, the connections worth having, the love worth experiencing. They all require the real you, not the performer, not the conqueror, not the fantasy. The flawed, uncertain, seeking, beautiful human being you actually are. And yes, some people will reject that person. So what? They're rejecting who you really are rather than who you're pretending to be. That's not failure. That's clarity. That's the universe saying, not this one. Keep looking. That's life helping you find where you actually belong. Because here's the truth. Your addiction doesn't want you to know you belong just as you are. Without the performance, without the conquests, without the endless proof of your desirability, You belong in this world. You deserve love. You deserve connection. You deserve to be seen and known and held. But first, you have to stop running. First, you have to turn and face the dragon you've been fleeing. First, you have to sit in the fire of your own transformation. First, you have to choose reality over fantasy, presence over escape, truth over performance. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So notice what irritates you about these words. Notice where you want to argue, to justify, to explain why your situation is different. Notice the voice that says, yes, but. That voice is your addiction talking. That voice is your resistance to healing. And that's okay. Resistance is part of the process. Fighting is part of the journey. The part of you that wants to stay addicted is also part of you. It deserves compassion too. It's scared. It doesn't know who you'll be without the addiction. It doesn't know how you'll cope without your favorite escape. So reassure it. Tell it you're not going to abandon it. Tell it you're going to find better ways to meet its needs. Tell it you're going to learn new strategies for dealing with pain and emptiness and fear. Tell it you're grateful for how hard it's worked to protect you, and now you're ready to try something different. This is integration. This is what Jung meant by making the darkness conscious. Not rejecting the shadow, but embracing it. Not fighting the addiction, but understanding it. Not hating yourself for your struggles, but loving yourself through them. Because, and this is crucial, the part of you that's addicted to lust is also the part of you that's capable of profound passion. The part that seeks endlessly is also the part that yearns for the infinite. The part that hunger for bodies is also the part that hungers for meaning. Don't kill that part. Transform it. How? By redirecting its energy. Instead of seeking the infinite through finite bodies, seek it through creative work, spiritual practice, service to others. Instead of hungering for conquest, hunger for truth, for beauty, for justice. Instead of losing yourself in fantasy, lose yourself in music, in nature, in the eyes of a child. This isn't sublimation. This isn't replacing one addiction with another. This is discovering what the addiction was really about. It was never about sex. It was about transcendence. It was about touching something beyond the ordinary. It was about feeling fully alive. You can have that. You can have that without destroying yourself or using others. You can have that through presence, through creativity, through genuine connection. You can have that by becoming who you really are instead of who you think you need to be. Jung understood. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. Your lust addiction is a dream, a repetitive, compulsive, increasingly hollow dream. But you can wake up. You can choose reality over fantasy. You can choose connection over conquest. You can choose love over lust, not through willpower, not through shame, through understanding, through compassion, through the patient work of integration, through the courage to feel what you've been avoiding and discover it will kill you. Through the wisdom to seek help when you need it, and connection when you're isolating. This is your invitation, not to perfection, not to sainthood, not to a life without desire or passion or sexuality. An invitation to wholeness, to showing up fully, to connecting deeply, to loving freely, to being human without apology or armor. The invitation is here now, in this moment. Will you accept it? Will you stop running long enough to feel what's really there? Will you trade your addiction for aliveness? Will you risk being seen for the possibility of being loved? Jung's words echo across time. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Your addiction is what happened to you. It's how you learned to cope with pain and emptiness and fear, but it's not who you are. Who you are is what you choose to become from this moment forward. Choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose yourself, your real self, not the addicted self. Choose connection over conquest. Choose presence over escape. Choose the difficult, beautiful, uncertain path of becoming whole. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Your journey out of addiction begins with a single moment of saying no to the compulsion and yes to feeling what's underneath it. It begins with turning toward yourself instead of away. It begins now if you're willing. And if you're not willing, that's okay too. The invitation remains. The possibility endures. Your less waits patiently for your readiness, because here's the final paradox, the ultimate grace. You're already whole. You've always been whole. The addiction is just what's keeping you from knowing it. So whenever you're ready today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, your true self will be there, waiting, not judging, not condemning, just waiting for you to come home, waiting for you to stop seeking outside what's already inside, waiting for you to discover that you are and have always been enough. This is Jung's gift to us. This is psychology's deepest wisdom. This is your birthright as a human being. Not to be perfect, not to be without struggle, but to be whole, to be integrated, to be consciously, courageously, completely yourself. The choice is yours. The moment is now. The journey begins with a single step where you take it